Good afternoon, folks. I am sorry about that little bit of technical difficulties there. Let's go ahead and get this all back. Had some camera problems there, but welcome to Modern Explorers Guild Workbench. I am Drew, and today we're going to be talking about the Star Wars Shatterpoint miniatures and game that's going to be coming out this Friday. We have here some of the miniatures. Actually, we have all of the miniatures here, which I'm going to pull back and let you all see momentarily. A lot of times what I do is I start from scratch and you folks get to see like the whole process. But here, what we're going to be doing is really looking at a lot of the more fun stuff. I'm going to remove this. Is actually the Star Wars Shatterpoint backdrop. This box comes with a variety of backdrops that you can be taking pictures with your minis, and they have quite a bit of info here on how you would be doing that. Let's see if I can get the camera to pick that up. There you go. So you can actually sit there, put all your miniatures on here. This gives you an idea. There's some other backdrops available as well. Move this to here. And so today we're going to pick a couple of these and we're going to paint them up in a traditional way. We've been using a lot of speed paints on the channel lately, and so I wanted to jump back into something that's a little bit more traditional. And I'm going to tell you my thoughts on these guys and kind of what this product does well and what it kind of struggled with as I built it. And this is coming from the perspective of someone who is an experienced builder and wargamer, someone who has built quite a few hundreds, if not now in the thousands of models and pieces of terrain. So the first thing I guess we'll talk about is the terrain that came in the box. So this is a really cool product that has terrain in it. And the MSRP of this box comes in at about $165. Pull a piece of terrain here. I'll stick one in the background. And so it has all of these kind of pieces of terrain that look like this. They're very Star Wars-esque. They definitely have those interesting spire kind of minaret inspired things here. And so there's quite a few pieces of this kind of walkway. There's also some kind of traditional Star Wars industrial buildings that come with it. Overall, I built the terrain that was in the box in about 4.5 hours, 5 hours maybe. And so it actually went together pretty easily. And so the terrain's actually really good. It's all high impact polystyrene. It's the same stuff that you would see that your Games Workshop models would be made out of, but just from the Star Wars universe. I put the terrain together first. And while I was putting it together, I did notice that they're not keyed super well. So an experienced builder would be able to look at these and put them together without a whole lot of problems. But I noticed that in some cases, there's a lot of freedom of how these can go together, which is great for more advanced builders. But for new builders, it might start to pose a little bit of a challenge. But that was kind of where my thoughts went with the terrain. It's good terrain. It's heavy duty terrain. It is modular, so you can kind of do what you want with it. And you end up getting quite a few pieces in this box. In fact, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You have 9 large pieces of terrain counting catwalks. And you have about 9 small boxes and another 3 or 4 pieces of scatter terrain that you can move around in here. So that was terrain. Off to a good start. Looks good. Went together pretty easy. Not a whole lot to complain about there. Then the models. So these models, and I'll pull one up here for you. These are some stormtroopers. And then we have, I'll go ahead and adjust the camera. Right, that should be a little bit better. So these models actually look pretty good. There's quite a bit of detail on them. they went together, at least the first ones in the instructions, went together pretty easy. And here you're seeing a model that's just in prime. So the base has been completed, but the model has been stuck on and the model's in prime. And we're going to paint them from this prime state here. My box did not have instructions in it, and I do not know if that was intentional on Star Wars' point. These are also made by Atomic Mass Games, same people that are making the X-Men game, Crisis Protocol. And so mine didn't have instructions, which I thought was a little bit strange, but I was able, after a little bit, yes, it is a clone trooper. After a little bit of work on the internet, and by that I mean looking at like the 5th or 6th entry, I was able to find someone who was posting a PDF of the instructions. So I'm unsure if that was a blim for this box. This box actually did come from Gamma, so it might be an earlier release of the product. But if you Google instructions, Shatterpoint, you should be able to find these guys at some point. It's a PDF, and it's going to have all of the instructions for both the terrain and for the miniatures in there. So the first about 15 of these guys, so these guys, the guys with smoke were just a little bit more complicated. These smoke trails that you see here, they're just a little bit fiddly. Anybody who had some swords had these right here. They were a little more fiddly, but they ultimately went together pretty well. There's not a whole lot of gaps in these models, which is really nice. I did no gap filling at all, and I put all of these together with Tamiya extra thin cement. So they had no problems taking the model glue here, or the model cement, I should say. They melted just like I would expect them to, and they went together no problems. Very few, if any, gaps. Some of them did have quite a bit of lines that are left over from being in the mold. And every now and then there was quite a bit of that I ended up removing. But ultimately, it was a very straightforward process to do about the first 10 or 15 of these guys. But the last seven, let's talk about the last 7 just a little bit. So the last 7 were these guys. They were all these robots. And what ended up happening here, go ahead and get you back in focus. I know focus is always one of those things that this setup struggles with. But these last 7 robots were very challenging. Just kind of looking at them, they're pretty fiddly. Their bits are really just kind of out there. Man, we're having a focus time here. We're having this no focus day. All right, let's try that. What I had in the very beginning of this video is my camera broke, and so I had to quickly remove it and re-add it to OBS, and it turns out that it makes you lose all your settings. So that's where we're at here. These robots look pretty decent, actually. There's really no big mold lines or anything crazy. There's no gaps in them. They went together pretty well, but there's not a whole lot telling you how to put them together. There's no real keying going on. So I found myself, I should say, in situations where to actually get the arms, the gun, and these 2-part arms over here together, I was having to put some cement on either shoulder, kind of pinch that together, put some cement here on the gun, put some cement on the elbow, kind of push them all together, hold them till they were tacky, and then slide a razor blade in there and just really push on the inside of this elbow to try and get it all to come together. And it was very awkward. It was just a very awkward kind of situation to get it all to work out. So I spent as much time working on these last guys, the robots, as I did all of the other models combined. So they did save those for last. Those were the last models that I ended up working on. but they are definitely the most fiddly. They really were giving me kind of Malifaux vibes, where, you know, sometimes Malifaux models have multi-part arms, multi-part, like, even hands and things. This wasn't quite that bad, but I was definitely getting that feeling of having to put all the little fiddly bits together with almost no keying and just kind of hoping and relying a lot on my experience building a lot of other models to make sure I got them in the right place. So we were off to a good start, but we ended in a place that was kind of rough here with these guys. But as you can see, they ultimately got together. What you're looking at here is about 5.5 hours worth of work, whereas the terrain took about 4.5 hours. Building these guys alone took about 5.5 hours of work. You will be getting 2 additional bases that you can use for someone else at some point, but all of the models that came with the kit are now here based, and they are based using these hips bases, which is kind of cool. You'll end up getting these 40 mil bases. So let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. So you'll have 16 of these in 4 different patterns. And then you'll end up with 2 of these larger 50 mil bases, and or they might actually be 45s, but I think they're 50s. These guys are 40s. Let's see, I can grab a Space Marine here. So he's a 32, and we got a 40 here, and so this is almost certainly a 50, although I don't have one laying around. Then this is a 60, so that makes sense. They're right in between there. But they were pretty nice bases, I'll say. For the most part, GW has pretty plain bases, unless you buy their expensive extras. These guys came out of the box with these nice hips bases with these cool patterns on them. So to get this look that you see on here, all I did was spray paint everything Administratum Gray, a GW spray paint. Then I came back and I used the mask. So I just took a piece of cardboard, tore it in these patterns, sprayed back over these with Wraithbone, let it all dry. The shade that you see on here is Reikland Flesh Shade, which I then just touched before it was dry with a Kleenex, just to kind of spread it out and make some interesting patterns. The shade that you see here is Nuln Oil. I came back over that with the same process. I just used a Kleenex just to get a nice random pattern on there as well. And then when I came back to be done, so when I finished them off, I took some, let's see, I took some ivory from AK Interactive, dry brushed over the parts that are supposed to be this kind of stone color. And then I took some Administratum and I dry brushed that over the parts that were supposed to be gray. And real simple, real quick, I was done doing all the work on all the bases in probably about an hour. So that was a very quick process there. Get them all in frame there. I think that just about covers all of these guys here. Again, this was a good overall. It was a good experience, but it definitely has those moments where I was thinking, if I had to do this when I first started building models, like if this kit was my first exposure to model wargaming, I'm not sure I would have had such a great time with it, just because of the fiddliness of many of the bits and the difficulty that ultimately I had with these last 7 models. These guys, though, that you can see here, just dry brushed as well. Same process. I sprayed them down with various paints. I masked this off, sprayed this white, came back over, Reikland Flesh Shade on everybody. And then this is a series of AK paints. Got Sahara Yellow and Yellow Sand is what I used on these guys, just dry brushed up from its original Wraithbone. On here, this is just Reikland Flesh Shade and Moot Green dry brush. So very simple here. But today, I think we're going to take them from where they're at to now finished models. And I think the ones we're going to work on are these 3. They were the ones that gave me the most trouble. And so I think we're going to take them from their current state, which essentially is in base and prime, and we're going to put all our finishing touches on it. Oftentimes you folks get to see me like work through from the very beginning of models. And I know that can be tedious. And if you've been around for any of my other streams or any of my other videos, you've seen me work up from that stage. And so I think today we're just going to start from where we're at, about halfway done. And if you really want to see my general process that I take, you can look at some of my other older videos, especially the earlier ones. I know those are not the best quality because I was lacking in quite a bit of experience, but they will definitely show you the technique I use to just start painting and get them from prime to kind of this middling state. All right, I'm going to now remove everybody we're not going to work on here. So let's go ahead and remove our clone troopers and Darth Maul and Anakin. And I'm going to just push them all over here on the side haphazardly. Just hope. There we go. We're going to get these guys in here. I'm going to put our 2 extras over there. Next week, depending on what gets released, we might start to get working on some other special projects here for 30K, but we're not going to get ahead of ourselves. That might end up changing. I'm going to grab a paper towel. So one thing I forgot in the kind of mad rush to get everything ready here for today's stream. So let me go and grab that. Right, get our paper towel in place. Get our guys right here. Gonna get this all situated. Again, I ended up having to undo the camera because it was just a little sad. Let's see where we're at. I know somewhere around here there's a wet palette. Here we go. Got our wet palette in. Go ahead and do my standard technique here. Grab an old credit card. And I like to smooth out my wet palette using an old credit card. You know, it gets those wrinkles in it. All smooth and ready to go. Well, let's decide what we want to do here. So what's really nice about the box that it comes with actually has quite a good reference. And so I'm looking over here at our guys, and it looks like they have their guns are black on here in the reference. And so we'll focus on these because there's quite a few of them. We have time, we'll come back to this guy. Looks like they have black guns with some silver on them and blue highlights. And then they have port wine shoulder pads. And that looks like all that's going on with these guys, which is actually pretty nice. You can get a lot out of just clean, simple paint jobs here. And that's what we're going to go for today on these guys, because it would be great to have our little battle droids here be ready for the battlefield. We're not going to stress too much about everything being perfect here. We're going to use our Wargamer Regiment brush by Army Painter. Go ahead and pull up my water. And today, let's go ahead and use, see if I can find it. I don't normally use the Abaddon Black by GW because it's a little thin, but here I think it'll actually do the job. The Army Painter Matte Black tends to be just a little thick, and it's not transparent at all unless it's super thin, and I'll end up doing a bunch of layers. So let me grab some Abaddon. All right, here we go. So we're going to use some Abaddon at base. We're going to go right on our weapons here. Then it looks like they've been highlighted with a little bit of gray and then a little bit of blue. So we're going to just put that on our palette. A little bit of water in there, just a touch. Start painting today. Get this guy here. Get my arm kind of situated. We're going to thin this down pretty well. We want it to go on smooth. There's quite a bit of detail on these weapons. We want to keep that detail if we possibly can. So we're going to come right in here and get this on. There we go. And that's nice. So it's going on. It's not really transparent, but it's definitely thinner. When it's thinner, it definitely has more of a chance of letting a little bit of that previous color through so we can get that detail. Whereas that army painter black has no chance. Not look like a wash. Maybe. Taking this right off my wet palette. Not too worried about where that goes. As long as it's on the gun, I just don't want to hit his hand if I can help it. Since we've already gone through the process on this guy of getting everything nice and weathered looking and colored, if we do hit any of the spots on him that are already finished, it'll be just that much more difficult to get them fixed. And so if we can, we're going to avoid touching anything on here that's already done. Get that done there. I'm going to catch the bottom of his weapon here. All right, that's pretty good. Let's get along this top line, because remember, we're going to come back here with some blue of some type. We're going to work that in. Have our thinned Abaddon black going on nice and smooth. Waiting his hand. And getting decent coverage. But this isn't like this is a base layer here. Exactly. So it's all right if we see a little bit of this original color through. It's going to help us when we come back with our blue highlights to have that little bit of color under there. Grab a little bit more water here. You can see it shrinks away from the highest points. That's okay. Just before it's completely dry, we're going to come back and get it down in there. I did arrange these battle droids like they were on the box. And so they're in whatever pattern they were with the guy kneeling in the middle. That seemed pretty good to me. Several people in the chat, not this chat, but the one on Facebook, have asked me, what do I know about Star Wars? And the truth is, not all that much. I enjoyed the original movies back when I was a kid. Not quite that old. They were out for a while. I was born in the 80s. The new ones were fine. When the set is finished, do I plan to display them at the store? In fact, yes. I am actually going to put this whole game out at the store set up so that it's going to essentially be a demo. And so this copy does not belong to me. This copy belongs to the store and was given to us at Gamma. And so this was a promotional product of sorts. So this is going to be at our store. For anyone to come in and do a demo game. We'll have it out there for you. So you'll have that opportunity. After I do the terrain won't take me a terrible amount of time. I'm not planning to save it for a stream or anything. And I'm mostly just going to mask that off. And then I'm going to use AK Streaking Grime on it. And we're going to be just real quick, 2 colors with Streaking Grime. And that's going to hide almost all of my sins. Which is really, really nice. One of the best possible uses for Streaking Grime outside of its intended use is that you get to really be lazy as long as colors are roughly in the right place, and you can Streaking Grime that, and it's perfect for just getting stuff out on the battlefield. That technique's not going to win you any awards, but most people are just trying to get stuff to look decent so that they can play with it, and that more than accomplishes that goal. So that's generally what I recommend even for Streaking Grime. It's just do that. Apply it with an airbrush if you can. That way you get some really good consistent coverage across. I know not everyone has an airbrush, but don't be intimidated by them. They are pretty cheap nowadays. And the truth is, you see those real expensive, like Harder and Steinbeck stuff, and you can buy an expensive airbrush. But the truth is, Harbor Freight sells them for, $100, comes with a compressor. And that honestly will get the job done. Unless you are really, really experienced, really know what you're doing with an airbrush, cheaper airbrushes and expensive airbrushes are going to do about the same thing. Just make sure you clean them out really well. Never let them sit with stuff in them. But yep, this will be at the store. As soon as I'm done with the terrain, I will probably finish up that terrain tomorrow. I will probably not film the process as I've got several different projects kind of going on all at once. This was something that just kind of happens. We just kind of had this out. It wasn't even on my radar actually, because I've been focusing on a lot of the GW products and Lorcana, which we actually got our Lorcana application out, which was great. So there's a good chance that, well, as good a chance as probably anyone else, that we will be able to carry Lorcana as a Lorcana store. And for those who don't know, that's Disney's new card game. But we finally got that out. So I've been focusing on a lot of other pieces lately. And I don't want to take the credit for that. That was really Brandon's doing. But it's something that's definitely been on all of our minds, is getting those kind of pieces going. But Mr. Brandon worked really hard, got that application in. That was great. I just provided him with some video and stuff for that. Oop, move these guys out the way before I smack them in the face with a brush. That'd be no good. Got a few little places here that need that. Don't want like weird bubbles on these guys' guns. Seeing through it kind of in general is fine, but in specifics is not. And so the next question I'm sure you have is, have I played this game? The answer is no. I have not played this game, and I do not know exactly how it will play. But I have seen some of the previews from it, and from what I have read in the instruction manual, it really appears to be the kill team for Star Wars. That's really where I feel that this went. And at that 40mm scale, you actually can see quite a bit of detail on these, despite them not being super detailed models. GW tends to kind of overdo their models now, where there's grenades and belt pouches and knives and guns and who knows what else, just stuff dripping all off of every just random Marine. This provides, I think, enough detail without overdoing it. And that's pretty nice coming from a GW kind of world where everything is just absolutely dripping with detail. It's nice if your intention is to sit and kind of paint for a long time and just you enjoy the process of painting forever, every little piece of something. But if that's not your deal, you've probably sat back and said, wow, there's a lot of stuff on these guys. I know I have, and I enjoy painting. Well, let's get these guys back in frame. All right, we'll catch these couple of little bubbled areas. All right, so now they have these black guns. And we're going to come back in a moment. We'll highlight these with blue, but right now let's take a look at these port wine colors. Let's see. It's almost a purple. I think a good match for this, well, let's lighten up a little bit of Screamer Pink with a touch of our ivory. So let's make a little mix here. And the part of this that's going to get this color is just this section up here on these guys, just these shoulder pad areas. And it looks like it goes all the way across the neck, which we can definitely do. Let's pull out some Screamer Pink as a base from Citadel. Get a little bit of this on our palette. So I'm afraid it's a little bit dark because we're going to come back and it looks like they put a shade over this. And when I shade it, you always want to start your colors a little bit more vibrant than you normally would if you're going to shade them out. And we are. So I'm going to add just a touch, not a lot, of ivory to this and mix it all in and get much lighter kind of pinky purple color. Oh yeah, this is good. That's what I want. And then when I shade this down with something that is either Reichland or equivalent, we're going to have a still a color that's recognizable. Whereas eventually what happens is you start with those dark colors, you desaturate it using browns, and then really nothing has any good color to it left. All right, let's take a look at that picture. It looks like it's just the very tops of these. Interestingly, they don't seem to be following anything, or this was a different model. Let's take a look at this. Let me grab this. Nope, that is interesting. All right. So for these guys, they didn't really follow anything that I can see. That's not on the model. So you're just going to end up freehanding this if you want to do the box. But that's all right. Sometimes it's good to give it some practice. So we're going to freehand this on. Again, there's really nothing on this model to follow. We're just going to put that across here. And when we add Reichland to this, this should come out to be just about the right color. Now, I'm sure these colors mean something. If you know it, you can let me know in the comments. But as far as I understand, these are just robots with pink shoulder pads, about to be kind of a port wine color. Kind of a dark red. Getting in here with this detail work. I'm not perfectly following the picture, mostly because I didn't quite like what they had done there, but I like that. That looks good. Then we'll come back through. There was a little part down here that they also hit, so I will do that too. There we go. And now to just do that 5 more times. Getting that in. Again, not too terribly worried. I don't think it's on the side. Let's take a look. Nah, that's not on the side. This color isn't. So we'll just stop it right where it looks like it should go. Turn him like this so I get easy access. We'll just freehand this on here. It would be nice if the plastic had some kind of line to follow. a la the GW models. So there is a constructive criticism I have for these guys the next time. I think one could argue that this makes them slightly more modular, which it kind of does. Now you're no longer really bounded by that piece having the mark on it to where you can situate their arms. But I feel like that is almost certainly not going to be an issue for probably 90+% of the people who do this. Right, got that on there. We're probably going to use a little bit more of a red when we go over it. Colors differentiate the battle droid's function. Blue is pilots, red is security, and yellow is command. All right. Luckily, we have Adam here to school us in the many colors of the Imperium. So these must be security, which makes sense. The kind of fluff of this, of Shatterpoint, is that you're following like operators, kind of like the Splinter Cell guy. And what happens is you are reenacting these little battles between heroes and villains that weren't the big battles. That would be like Legion, but these little tiny battles that happen on the down low, but would have a lot of consequence. In the universe. Let's get that right there. Almost these two lobes, so there's a little bit of stuff to follow in there. All right. Now we have that there. When we come back with our red, yeah, we're gonna hit that with some red shade, and then that's gonna help that look red. But it's definitely got some pinks and purples in there too. Yeah, that makes sense. That these would be security droids. They'd be backing up some of these other villains. Get that in there. Then we have this lobe. Make sure you're on camera. Maybe working on this, if I really enjoy the game, would inspire me to learn a little bit more about the Star Wars universe. Then we got to get down here if we can. There we go. Nice and almost good. Gonna come back in here, give these guys their shoulder pads. Same thing here. Get that down. For the most part, the example paint schemes that they have on here are pretty straightforward. It looks like they've used a very similar painting process to what you would normally find with Army Painter or that you would normally find with any of the other big paint producers. Base coat, shade, then bring everything back up. Sure you're on. There you are. On. I'm going to use that little area there. Pick up a little more of our paint. Now for this, I will probably put a second coat on. Because if I don't, I feel like this would be difficult for that red wash to really get in there and not overpower everything. Character units in particular you'd want to watch the Clone Wars animated series. You know, when I was a kid, there was an animated series on something. I assume, well, maybe it's Cartoon Network at the time. And I remember watching that cartoon series, and General Grievous was just laying waste to everyone in this cartoon series. And I was like, that is awesome. And then I saw the movie, and he was like an asthmatic robot who could barely get things done. And that disconnect I found very disappointing. So I have seen a little bit of the animated stuff, but it's very old. I'm guessing it might not even be canon anymore. I know once Disney took over, some of the things were canon and some of the stuff wasn't, and some of the books were and some of them weren't. I know that was upsetting to a lot of the fan base. I didn't really have any experience with it, so I can't tell you for sure what was going on there. I just remember that animated series with Grievous. He was awesome in that animated series, and then less so in the movie. Yep. And this is such a small amount of paint, it really does dry quite quickly. So I'm just making sure it's nice and strong, especially in the front area. Whoop. By giving it just a tad more here. Ah, Samurai Jack. That makes sense. The Samurai Jack series was also really, really good. That was that same era with like Powerpuff Girls and Johnny Bravo and stuff. Had to be like mid 2000s ish. Yep. I should probably give that a look. My kids would probably like it too. All right, so let's see what we're doing here. Let's see how these guns are doing. I'm just touching the guns to see if I got any paint that's going to come off on me. Nope, looks like not. That's good. So we're good to add some of our blue highlights here to our guns. And let's see what we got. That is, I'm just grabbing the box here. That is a very, very light blue. Very light. So maybe what I'll do first is go ahead and hit it with a little bit of lead belcher. Come here. Yep. So let's hit that with some lead belcher. And that's going to get us on the right path, I feel. And then we can come back and touch it with just a little bit of maybe blue contrast. So let's grab up some lead belcher. I am still putting this on my wet palette, even though I am about to use a very small dry brush to apply this. Let's get our small dry brush. Here's our very small dry brush. This is one of the Wet and Wild brushes. You might actually recognize this brush from another series. This is the one that painted the entire Silent King in 24 hours. Fun fact, in episode 3, when Anakin sees Grievous, he says, "You're shorter than I expected." Ah, okay. That is an interesting fun fact. All right, right now I'm just rubbing out some of this lead belcher. And now we're just gonna apply it in little circles. Our happy little lead belcher going on. I think the blue I'm seeing is just this hint of blue. Like there's just so very little of it. Whereas this black here is just, or not black, but this lead belcher here is going to give us quite a bit of additional detail on these weapons. In fact, it's entirely possible that that blue I'm seeing is a reflection from something else in the scene. They had to make sure they never cross paths just to keep up with the timeline. Yep, you can see this right here. We're just barely touching it here with a little bit. Go back and get a little more. Wipe that out. Of course, you hear me say this every time. This is a dry brush, but it's not truly dry. A little bit of moisture on here. Otherwise, it would all dry out in the brush and it wouldn't really come out. All right, that's looking pretty good. And we got a little bit more detail on this. I'm just going to hit that with just a hair more right on the tops. Same thing here, just a little bit. All right, now we got some more detail on these guys. Yeah, thanks, Adam. I appreciate you being here today. Thanks for all the info. All right, now we got these guys' shoulder pads. We're going to go ahead and apply a little bit of our red shade here. So let's see what we got for red shade. We got a little bit of Army Painter red tone here, which is what we're going to apply. Looking through this cartridge here. There we go. Find one of these clean cartridges. A little bit of our red tone there. This is the red tone we're going to apply to these shoulders. And we're just going to apply it with our standard brush. Get that there. I'm going to bring a little bit to my palette just to make that a little easier. Get that on there. Make sure we apply this nice and even. We'll probably come back for a little bit of a highlight on this, but this is gonna definitely help get the detail in. I am bringing this to my palette so I can work on it back and forth. Make sure that goes all the way around. And same thing here. We're going to come wick a little bit of that away. That's just a hair too much. And there's just pull some of that off. Excellent. Right, we need a little more on the edge there. All right, now that's on. Grab some more over here. Shade these guys out on this side. Same there. Pull this guy over as well. Always a struggle here to keep things on. It might be time to invest in a better camera. Been using this this Brio by Logitech, and it is not bad, but it seems to have not been made for the purpose here. Right. So now we have this kind of port wine red on these guys. And I think what we'll do is come back in just a moment and we're going to highlight with some Mephiston. I think this is going to really sell the rest of the red here. Without it being too pink or anything. Actually, you know what we should do? Just so that everything is nice and together, we're actually going to mix some of our red into our base color. Yep, ooh, that's nice. And then get something that is a little bit less harsh than Mephiston. Mephiston is almost a pure red tone. That might be just a little too much. All right, I'm going to mute you folks, and then I'm going to come back here with the hairdryer and dry off this red tone. It doesn't dry quite as quick as the GW stuff. I'm going to grab a magnet real quick. I had one of the backgrounds fall. All right, reveal. All right, that should keep that background in place. All right, so now we have a mostly dried shade on these guys here. Go ahead and bring the camera in so I can put my arm down. And now we're going to highlight out just the edge here with our Mephiston mixed. And this is just going to help so that this reads as a red. So it's a very shiny, very shiny red shade from Army Painter. Can't say I've used it too many times in the past, so I wasn't quite expecting that level of shininess. So we're actually going to hit the shoulders when we're done with a little bit of matte varnish just to bring that back down, or we might actually end up using some paint medium. That would do it too. Yeah, that is some shiny stuff right there. Right. Yeah, very shiny. Let those dry for a moment right here. Now let's take a look at our green guy here. Let's see. Those colors are mostly right there. All of this, though, is a lead belcher. So we're going to come back and we're going to fill in his details here. Then we're going to come back over this with some white. And then this we will use contrast on. That's very easy to do. So we're going to grab up a little bit of our lead belcher from our wet palette. And we're going to come in and we're going to work on some of his details. So these areas in here, the area, well, this ankle area. Now, what's nice about already doing kind of all of this other work is that any place you don't hit very specifically with this metal color is actually just going to end up reading as still the metal, but with more wear on it. And so that's fine. When it fades to a darker color, your metals should be okay there. And that's less of a concern. If it fades to a lighter color, that might not look quite as nice. Which is why finishing the model to this point is actually a-okay. Looks like there was, yep, that little bit there and this little bit here. That little raised area, hit that up. All right, let's get the ankle in here. You can see this is a pretty quick process here. We're not really struggling with anything. We're not really too worried about what's going on. We just want to be accurate. As long as we're accurate here, I think for the most part, this is not going to really have any issues at all. Move him around, just sneak right in there. Get those pivoting points. Same thing here from the back. Make sure we hit the back here too, because this is the side you'll be looking at quite a bit on these models. So you don't want to skip that. Otherwise, you'll be looking at kind of the worst of the paint job yourself. That's a little bit less fun. You can see it right there where the shade didn't quite do what it was supposed to do. And it got missed. That's all right. Look at those arms. Right. Looks like, yeah, all of this section here is silver. So let's go ahead and use a lead belcher on that. Just going to go on the tops of these panels. That'll make my shade, when I shade this all down with Nuln Oil, a lot more effective. Let's see. And I'm just still looking over at a reference. And the reference is the box. Nothing particularly special over there. So I've got these sections here. Gonna sneak in there and get all of that painted up. Now this guy looks like he might have a little bit of gold on him too, which is great. We have just the thing for that. Gonna come in, get some of that. Not too worried about the finer details in there. Get this side there. Take a look at his face. Yeah, looks like all of this gets that treatment with our lead belcher. Get you back in the frame. What we're really interested in doing is just not making a ton of mistakes here. Keeping everything nice and clean. That's going to make this process go much smoother in the end. Mostly because the less we have to touch up, the faster this kind of thing tends to go. And I would love to get these done in the shortest amount of time. Keep turning this guy. So we're going to come back here, and a lot of this is going to also be silver in here. So let's go ahead and just hit all of that all the way down to there. Same thing here, this little bit of silver on his back. We have this joint here, which is about to be silver, and this joint here, which is also going to be silver. I'm going to assume this panel here on his back is going to be silver, even though I can't really see it. That looks good. Don't want that there. Let's go ahead and pull that off. There we go. We can always do that if you find you've got paint somewhere you just don't want it. This covers up that other mistake there. All right. Looks like we've got most of the silver detail for this guy in. We'll go ahead and do his few gold accents. Gold accents on this will be done in a retributor. That is a base paint by GW. I'll go ahead and pull that. Just looking around, there's very few bits on this model that are in this retributor. But it looks like his eye sockets are. It looks like there's a little bit here as well. So these wires here. Then it looks like potentially this is as well. So we'll just hit that with it. Right, and I believe that's going to be it for these gold accents. You know what? We hit that area there. Let's go ahead and just pull that down. See if there's anything on his back that we might want to be gold. So we'll make that gold, and we'll make that gold. All right, that should add a little bit more visual interest to this guy. Now let's switch from doing our metallics here, making sure to change out our water pot. This is our water pot that we were using. Because when you're using metallics, you're going to get flakes in your pot. And so you don't want to contaminate your bits. So I like to have a water pot for metallics and a water pot for non-metallics. Let's go ahead and grab up some of our Army Painter matte white. So we're going to use this on the thing that's in his hand for around the base. I'm going to put just a touch of this on my palette. Don't need too much of this right now, but in the reference, this area underneath is also white. So we're going to put one layer on that. We're not going to go super crazy here, but we do want that to take our contrast paint and look decent. So we're going to go ahead and get that taken care of, because this is like a projection. Just kidding, Adam is back. Well, it's good to have you back. This is a projection here that he's holding up, because I have been told that this is some kind of tactical droid thing that shows you tactics or something. My expert knowledge of this is still showing. All right, well, this should actually give us some reasonable contrast here on the model. We are going to let that dry. Nothing is worse than having your poor contrast paint get mixed in. And I believe we're going to go with Talisar on this. So this is one of my favorite contrast paints. Anytime you want some kind of quick glow effect or you want some kind of quick gem effect, painting whatever it is. Oh, he's part of the command structure. Nice. So anytime you want a gem, you can paint whatever it is pure white, come back over it with this, and then give it, after it's dried, one little dot in the upper right-hand corner. If you're feeling brave, you can put one in the lower left-hand corner for a speculative highlight, and then you will be good to go. So I think, for the sake of hurrying everything along, I am going to mute you, and then I'm going to dry this off. Yep. And I know you've probably seen it before me, but I forgot to paint his shoulder here. So I'm going to grab some lead belcher and go ahead and finish that off. Better to fix it now than to notice it later and be sad. All right. Making sure to reach back over here to my pot that had the metal in it. So that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and apply our Talisar. Now, we want this to have a blue tinge. We don't want it to be so blue that we're not quite sure what's under it. So we are going to use some of our medium here. I do recommend whenever you're doing something that you want the contrast effect to go ahead and use your contrast medium. This way your contrast paints keep their properties. And I'm going to go ahead and put a brush full of that on my wet palette in the corner. Then I'm going to grab up a little bit of my blue and I'm going to mix that blue in. And so we're going to make a pretty thin blue contrast that's going to go right over all this white, which I now hope is very dry. And it was dry. Look at that. It all worked out in the end. And this is the color that they picked too. And you can see that's going to just go on, and really what it's doing is just coloring any of those spots that were white. Oh, got the camera bonk in for this session. All right, make sure I have good coverage because I don't want to do this again. Yep, look straight down in there. We can see some of the spots didn't get the coverage. Excellent. Then we're going to hit that with a final dry brush of white, but not yet. We want that to be dry. While that's going to dry, we can go back to our droids and see what we need to do about those shiny armor pads. So here's our guy. This is actually looking pretty good. You can see I've not really taken that much time on him. They go real quick here. There's just not all that detail those GW models have on them that needs to be like, check out this dude right here. Check out this guy. Watch this. This, let me back him up. Take some of this light off so it's not so crazy. This guy right here, this is a Primaris librarian. He got keys. He's got grenades. He has little purity seals all over him. He has wires. He has tubes. His sword has all the things that I just said. Look at all that detail. I mean, it's a cool model, don't get me wrong. But that is a ton of stuff that you've got to paint. A ton of stuff. And if you don't, I mean, it kind of is going to look like you left some stuff unpainted. But now, take a look at this guy. All he really were those panels and then the trim. Bring the light back down. He needs it. That other guy was white, so it was killing my white balance. But look at this guy. And you can see how much faster we were able to get him done than the other. And he looks fine. He's not going to win any awards, but again, that's not the goal here. The goal is just to get stuff nice and ready for the tabletop. I'm going to touch that. Nope, not quite. But let's go check out our droids here. I'm going to move this camera back down to here. Now, what are my options? I can take a little bit of matte varnish and go over these shoulder pads, which is what I'm tending towards. Or I can take a little bit of Lamia Medium. Lamia Medium is a paint medium that does not have pigment in it. And so that's going to matte them back down too. I think that that's probably going to be my better choice here, is to get some Lamia on them. So I'm going to grab that. And again, when you get the paint medium, it's just paint with no pigment. We're going to take a little bit of this, and we're going to put it on my wet palette. And then, and you know what, this might not do it either, and if it doesn't, we'll come back. But we're going to take this paint medium, and we're just going to get that on our guys right here, wherever that shiny was. And when this dries, this should be a lot more matte. Making sure. Kind of put a lot on there. Because it's clear, it's easy, just like varnish, to put a bit too much, because you can't necessarily see how much of it's just sitting on the brush or on the palette there. So sometimes you'll pick up too much of it, and then you're sad. Or because you're dumb and put it on a wet palette like me right over here, you're just picking up water or something, which is entirely possible. All right, so we're gonna let those guys dry, and then we're gonna see what comes of that. Right now, though, we're gonna put a little bit of a dry brush on this, and we already have some matte white on our wet palette. We're going to pick that up with our little tiny brush, the same one that we used for the metal. Now I'm going to test this on the back of my thumb here. Yep. So yeah, you can see it leaves just a haze. That's all we're looking for. On a piece this tiny that's connected just right there, we're going to hold this just like this, give it lots of support. Because if you try dry brushing something like this without supporting it, you're going to rip it off. Then you'll be sad. We're just going on little circular motions, going around the bottom too. The bottom was textured, and so that's going to also allow you to get some nice kind of free detail on it. Pick up just a hair more. We're going to hit just the very tips of this. And this is Dangerously Pure White. But there we are. So we have the battle droid here, and this guy's all done. We're going to go ahead and ring this guy's base here. So I'm just washing out my dry brush, going to put it on my rack to dry. Let's go ahead and grab our Army Painter Matte Black. This is what I prefer to do bases with. And we put this on whenever we're done. This is the last finishing bit of a model. I'll hold on to the guy, and we'll probably give this 2 passes. Touch just a little bit. We want to thin this down so it goes on nice and smooth. Make nice even strokes here with this. Now, I've never painted one of these Star Wars bases, so I'm not entirely sure of the geometry. Sometimes these have like a little bend to them or something strange. But I'm just going to use the edge of the brush to catch whatever's there. See how it looks. And so for the release of this, we should actually have this out. I don't know if I will have had time to know how to play it any more than I currently don't know how. But you folks will have instructions. I know you are all quite clever and will be able to tease out the meaning of all the things from that book. Just a touch more water here. There we go. And there doesn't seem to be any kind of strange geometry to this, so that's nice. This black also really doesn't tend to tear at all. So that is an additional good thing. All right, so here we are with our finished robot. And I think he looks quite good. There wasn't a lot of effort done here. I didn't go back and put Nuln Oil over his other bits because I do want them to be a little shiny, and that's fine. You don't always have to shade down your metals. So we have one down, and now we're about to work on our other guy. So we'll put him right there. We'll let that black rim dry while we come back and take another look at these guys. And I would say these guys look like they're done too. That took a lot of the shine off, not all of it, but most of it. Now for these guys, there's a little bit on the foot that I would like to take care of here. And so I'm going to grab, I believe, yeah, some Filthy Cape. This is an Army Painter paint. There's a little bit of a glue, you can see it right here very clearly, around their feet that didn't do the thing I want it to do. I ended up putting them on with a gel glue. And that gel glue, in fact, that's going to be just a little bit too bright. So I'm going to mix in, yeah, some of my Army Painter matte black. And we're just going to touch up a little bit of stuff on this base here. So I don't want it to be so obvious that there's glue coming out from around their feet. And in these one or two little areas, we're just going to hit that in so that it blends just a little more. Not a big deal, but if we can fix it, then here we have the same thing, but we have a slightly different color that we're going to work with. And then for this, I'm going to grab just a little bit because I don't have to shade it down. We're going to grab some sand yellow, and we're going to desaturate that with just a little bit of our black here. And so that sand yellow desaturated is going to be what we go in with. And now it should look like just a little bit of stone. There we go. Rather than be kind of a bright white color. And what we can do is add just a little bit of that to the edge of our rocks. There we go. And then that should bring all of that together. And I would say these guys are done too. Again, these guys came together really, really quickly. Their lack of detail in this regard is actually a boon, something that GW has a hard time resisting. It's just putting all that detail in. So eventually all their models are pretty baroque, overwrought. Get a little bit of water on here. And we're going to go ahead and ring these guys too. I don't think there's any other geometry on these bases. So they've already been cleaned up. They originally did have sprue around these. These bases do come on their own little sprues. This will certainly need at least 2 coats here. Trying to make that nice and smooth. And that goes pretty quickly here as well. All right, whoop. There we go. Let's catch this guy too. Trying to make nice smooth strokes on this. Trying to use mostly the edge of the brush. I was kind of afraid I was gonna pop these guys off the base, but that Gorilla Glue gel has done a really good job keeping them in place here. Get just a little more moisture on that. Back around. Right, this guy should have dried by now. Let's give him his final coat all the way around. This is where it's a little harder to see where you started. I recommend taking note. I started at the side of his right leg, so that's where I should finish. This is where you do want that nice smooth brush stroke here. I have enough moisture to get that done. So now I've gone all the way around. Let's take a look there. That actually looks pretty dry as well. A nice strong black pigment going all the way around. Oop. Something gave. What was it? Up. It was the arm. The dreaded arm pop. That's all right. We will fix that in just a moment. Good opportunity for you to see how I would fix something like that that was on a painted model. Excellent. Well, no, it's the one with the gray base that has the one arm that's broken. It's not really broken, it just came out of his socket there, or whatever suffices for a socket here, which, in all fairness, is not that much. Right. Make nice smooth strokes when we can. I know you see me making some choppy strokes on here. Do as I say, not as I do. Coming all the way around. See that gray go to a nice strong black. It's excellent. All right. Now we got that last little bit there where the arm came undone. Let's check that out. What do we got going on? All right, not too bad. So what happened is right inside of here, right where I pointed to originally, we had that come undone. So let's actually get, and what's nice about ultra thin cement is it doesn't really matter if there's paint on the model or not. We're going to put that ultra thin cement down in there, take our razor blade, and we're going to pull it to the right location. Then it should become tacky, and then it should stay. So I'm just going to hold this in place using the edge of the razor blade. You can see right there at the end of the razor is where it came undone. Still not quite attached well enough, so I'm going to hold a little longer. And this arm is under just a little bit of tension, which in the case of this model is not that bad. You don't want it under a ton of tension, but a little bit's okay. That's going to keep him holding the gun straight. All right, now that should be enough there. And now here are our first three models that I then touched the edge of, but that was good because it dried very, very quickly. I do see just a hair gray right there. Right there, and that was the glue. All right, these guys now are truly done. Nice, let's check on our time. 1:31. Let's see if we can't get one of our troopers started here. So this guy looks like a clone trooper. We'll put these guys in the background so they can mess with the camera and make everything sad, but you can still see them. There we go. All right, clone trooper. Let's see what this guy looks like. We got to find. There's actually quite a few clone troopers, or maybe not. Maybe these are like Boba Fett guys, which might not be clones, but maybe they are. I don't know. Let's see. We're gonna match this guy. So this guy has white armor and blue highlights here. So white armor with blue highlights. So blue shoulder pads, blue markings on his helmet, but everything else is white, and the connection areas of his armor are black. So we're going to go ahead and hit those up real quick. In this case, I'm going to switch back to my Abaddon because Abaddon Black is just a little bit more transparent. That's going to give us some texture in between here. All right, we're going to come to the back where there's more of these armor panels, or I should say they meet. We'll go ahead and get that done. This is where I'm painting in the deeper parts of the model first. That way I am less likely to hit them as I paint further and further out on the model. A pretty standard technique is painting the inner parts first. That's barely there, but we'll still hit that. Same there. That little bit there. Can't see the other part here. Guessing this is going to be black in here. Let's hit that. The reference picture I have only has him from the front, so I have to guess what else on this guy is going to be black. That's all right. Surely there's no canon for me to mess up here and anger the whole of the internet. Get that in there. That there. Definitely some black in here with our reference. Mandalorians with jetpacks, so yes. Boba Fett guys. There we go. There's a lot of them Boba Fett guys. There's also Boba Fett girls, which is interesting. We got our Boba Fett guys and girls. Like, here's one of them. This is one of the Boba Fett girls. There's another one who decided not to wear a helmet. This is her. She has like a wrist-mounted, like, little shooter thingy, I assume. All right. And we're going to take some of our pure white here. Make it a little more on the palette. Yeah, there's quite a few people with jetpacks here, both on and off, them turned on or turned off. Get some water on this. If we aren't careful with white, it'll be very chalky. That's not what we want for this model. So after mixing, we'll pick up some new, we're gonna come back. We're gonna get this and we're gonna just blend it in so that just the very tops of this are this white. Top of his boot here. Whenever you're dealing with sharp geometries, you can decide not to paint certain sides of it and get quite a different effect. So you can actually see those and they'll come into sharp relief. That's Bo-Katan Kryze, leader of Mandalore. Well, I'm not sure which one of those I held up was her. But that is fun. Could have also called this cast Drew doesn't know anything about Star Wars, but is painting them and relying on, I would say chat, but in particular Adam, just to answer all the questions. Coming in here with some more white. Colors is belt. That's still white. Everything's white here, more or less. Except his gun. His gun's gonna be black, right? Yeah, because they're holding the same guns as the those droids, or at least they look like the same gun. Yep, and you can see here, I'm just blending all of this stuff in, not going too crazy, but also making sure that I'm not kind of obliterating that zenithal that I put on earlier. And for that, I'm using pretty thin down pure white so that I get kind of the highlight where I want it. And I don't have to come back through and shade everything back out again. But I don't want it to overpower this model. And if we were gonna do some stuff here, we could actually put quite a bit of like either streaky grime on this guy, or we could put pigments like Vallejo powder pigments, and then that would definitely give you some leeway here on these guys. But here, I'm just trying to highlight out a little bit of this mask so that you can make him out on the battlefield to see what you're looking at. And what are those pouches doing? Everything's kind of white, actually. So we'll come back, get some white on these pouches as well. But unlike their paint job, I would like a little more contrast here. So we won't paint everything kind of a brilliant white color. Catch the tops of these though. That in shadow, leave that in shadow. All right, so he's starting to look a little better. Of course, this camera is poor at anything dealing with white, so let's turn him down by 1. Boop. That's gonna help. All right, yeah, there we go. We can kind of see what's happening there. Now, I could spend a ton of time doing this, but I'm not, because there's not a great reason to. He's just a random trooper guy, and so we're gonna go ahead and move on to his gun. We're going to do that the same way we did with the droid. We're just going to come across with our Abaddon black, and we're going to get this gun nice and blacked so that we can come back over it with our lead belcher and highlight it out, and then that'll be all of our details there. Here again, I don't mind seeing some of this original white that he was painted come through. That's totally fine. And so I am using the Abaddon here, which is a little transparent, a lot more transparent than our army painter. Getting him painted up. Go in here, grab that next to him, but without getting it on him. That would be wonderful. Just going to strengthen this area down here just a tad, just so I can see. So one of the things that oftentimes makes models pop is this, where you come through, and this is the old GW method too, as you're just lining these bits carefully, and that's just giving you a little bit more contrast here. Then we're going to stipple just a little bit of additional darkness in here. And that's going to give me just a little more contrast. And that contrast really helps to sell these models, even when there's not that much going on. Yep, and that's really where people are going to be looking. Right in the face too. So grab a little bit more. Now you could do this with an ink, and acrylic ink would be fine for this process. Here I am just taking a little bit of Abaddon and very carefully going in here. Just getting a little more contrast and detail. All right. Let's see what our time is. 1:44. We're doing fine. Wow, we spent this whole time with this extra fine cement just open next to my elbow. That it did not spill is somewhat of a miracle. All right, what do we got? That blue color makes me think we're probably dealing with like a Soltec. We got a Soltec, and we're going to highlight it out in a moment. So let's grab some Soltec. Put that on our palette. This is going to take care of the blue bits of this model, which are going to be his shoulder pads. And what else? Every time I look at this reference, I have to pick up the entire box. There's like a little area on his chest that was hand done. There's like a V on his face that was also hand done. There's like a, oh, he's got quite a few little little things happening. But let's see how well I can do here. Grab a little bit of moisture here. That's too much. There we go. Go ahead and get his shoulder pads. Those are pretty straightforward. I'm sure his shoulder pads being blue also means something. He is pictured here with Anakin and the girl with the kind of like tentacle dreadlocks. One blue shoulder pad. Slightly off topic, this Soltec is one of my favorite kind of green blues. It's very useful in lots of situations. It tends to look good when you use it to do multi-part gems and stuff on Eldari. Just in general, it's a great color. Covers well if you leave it thick. You can thin it out like I'm doing here. You can still see the work that we did underneath it. Just in general, all around good color. He had, for some reason, a blue wristband, which we're going to add in. Is there a blue wristband? He also had some blue marking down his chest here, which I will, touch there and touch there on the shoulder pads and mess up our nice clean paint, which is great. But I'm going to hold him like this. It's going to be hard to see. Then I'm going to give him this right along there. And that looks a little crazy, but that's definitely what he's got going on in the reference. So let's go ahead and get that up there. He then has the marking that goes down the front of his helmet right here. Grab a little more of that, and it continues up the side of his helmet, which will continue along here. I'm going to put him down so I have a little bit more control. I'm going to base off of his arms. I'm going to finish the helmet out. Just going to go over that till it completes. Not the cleanest I've ever done, but again, for what we're doing here, this should be good. Yeah, sure. Anakin's clone squad. He got his own clone squad. All right, let's grab up a little bit of our Lothrian. This is what we're going to highlight this with. And we're just going to blend this in. Get some thin Lothrian. I'm going to come in here. Touch up this area here. And we'll touch this up, even though I just painted it and it's probably still slightly wet. We'll all be okay. I'll touch that area up there. Now we're going to come in here. There we go. Give that very center line just a touch more. And then this guy is almost done. Our last thing to do with this guy is going to be to find, there it is. Now this black is going to be completely dry, so we're going to come in, we're going to grab our little dry brush, and we're going to hit the top of his weapon here, same as we did with the other. I'm going to give his weapon just a touch of lead belcher to highlight out. All right, this guy's done too. Again, we're not going to stress the details on these guys. They're going to end up as just random guys on the battlefield here, random clone troopers. And so, well, maybe not super random because they're Anakin's special squad, but they are still ultimately just the troopers here. And we're going to hit this guy up with this base. And we're going to declare him done before our stream is over. Look at that, with 10 whole minutes to spare. And I can answer any questions that people have about this particular game as it pertains specifically to models and terrain. I've not played this game. I've just built the models. They will be available in our store, Modern Explorers Guild, for anyone to come in and get in a test game to see how it plays. As soon as I finish up the terrain. I'm not going to paint this to some crazy standard, but I do want it to look reasonable. Let's see here, me kind of pushing the envelope on that guy's base. There we go. All right, so what were we able to paint in about 2 hours? So we were able to take care of our squads of droids. Oh, and I grab the sides like a crazy person. The sadness is great. All right. Pull them back here, get that light in the right place for my poor sad camera. So I'll bring these guys up close one more time here. We're up too close. So in 2 hours, we were able to paint up 2 squads of these droids. These are the only 2 squads. Oh, I see the problem. Oop, there we go. Get our light back on that the camera was balanced for. So we have these 2 guys done. I'm going to spray all of these guys down with varnish. That way they kind of can be a little more durable since they'll be played with by lots of people. We're able to get our cool little tactical droid. This guy's actually my favorite. I like him the most. I tend to like the kind of servitors and battle droid things like this. But yeah, I think he turned out really well. And now we have a trooper here. And he has just been rough painted with a single highlight here. So he has just a touch of depth. He's a little sketchy, but that's okay. We're relying a lot on our Zenithal to kind of carry us through here. But he's got the right colors, and we kind of know what's going on there. So that seems good enough to me. If we were being very generous, we could say that in 2 hours, we managed to paint, what, 3, 6, 7, 8 models? Even though they happen to share a base. But I would still be happy to say that in 2 hours, we ended up painting kind of 4 models to a reasonable tabletop standard that is plenty good for people to be able to play with at the guild and have a great time with and, you know, be immersed in this new Star Wars skirmish game. So just kind of to cover all of my thoughts one last time. I had a good time building these models, especially the terrain I thought went well. I think it's good terrain. It's modular terrain. I enjoyed building most of the non-robot characters. So pretty much everything you see here were the ones that I had a little bit less fun with. They're just very fiddly. They're very small. They're very difficult to work with. And so sometimes I found myself having to juggle quite a bit to get everything in the right place. Overall, though, I would say that this is a game that is designed to be for experienced wargamers, people that have built models before and have painted models before, that are somewhat familiar with skirmish-style war games like Kill Team and Warcry, and they want to experience that gaming experience in a Star Wars universe. They want to have the clone troopers. They want to have Anakin. They want to have like Darth Maul. Whoop, come back here. They want to have like, this is Darth Maul here, so they want to have that experience, but in this universe. I don't think that this is a great kit, a great starting point for people to come into wargaming, just because of the difficulty of some of the model, the lack of instructions, which again might have been a just blim on this box. And so I don't actually know. I've not opened the other boxes we have in stock to see if they have instructions in them. But when people start to buy these, I am certainly going to ask if they'll check for me and let me know. Although I was able to find instructions online. It just did take a little bit of Googling. So yeah, it's a fine product designed for people, I feel, that have a little bit of experience in wargaming and that like Star Wars. But those are my thoughts, and not seeing any other questions today, I think I'm going to call it here. So thank you so much for being here with me today. Thank you for Adam for answering all of our questions. That was excellent. I appreciate you letting me know and letting anyone else in the audience know the information you shared so that we can all be a little more knowledgeable about Star Wars together. And I hope you'll all come back and join me here next week at the same time, same place, Wednesday at 12 p.m. for the next Modern Explorers Guild stream. Thank you, folks, and I'll see you here again next time.